Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for having us here. I'm really excited about our talk. We're going to talk about a collaboration between Marriott and the Washington Post Creative Group. I know that we are the two people standing between you and lunch, so we're going to try to have some fun here. In the spirit of collaboration, people usually hold questions to the end, but if we're talking about something, you have an interest in something, please just speak up, let us know. I know there are a lot of you here, but to the extent it's a conversation and we could find out what you're interested in as we're talking about our partnership, that would be great. So I'm the head of creative for the Washington Post Creative Group. We're an in-house branded content studio. We work with Marriott, Visa, AT&T. We have a really deep collaboration with the Washington Post newsroom. We use a lot of those insights to fuel a lot of our work. And this is Robin. I'll let Robin introduce herself.
Yes, I'm Robin Bennefield, and I head editorial strategy at Marriott International. As a part of that, I am editor-in-chief of Marriott Bonvoy Traveler, which is our destination online digital magazine.
So just to take you through what we're going to talk about, we'll talk a little bit more about our backgrounds and how we got here. Then I want to talk about the partnership, the regeneration of travel. Then we thought it would be good to spend some time talking about how we got there, why it worked, why it didn't. A lot of these sessions sometimes can be roses and rainbows, but what were some of the things that we learned, some insights that we had, and then finally, just some takeaways from the program. So just to get into it a little bit, Robin, I'd love to hear how you got to where you are. And of course, I'm going to ask you what your first big travel memory is and what your regenerative travel plans are.
Wonderful. I guess I'll start with how I arrived here. My background is as a journalist. I worked for many years at U.S. News and World Report magazine. And while I was there, I got involved into the digital space which eventually led me to Discovery. Someone that I knew at U.S. News moved over to Discovery, and I had a role there over 12 years playing an executive producer, site director for their show sites, discovery.com, animalplanet.com, and tlc.com. In 2011, I got laid off. This kind of gets a little bit into my travel leanings, but I've always been really interested in travel. And while I was working, I would always take a couple of trips a year internationally. And I saw this opportunity to travel once I got laid off. And I started a travel blog, started freelance travel writing, etc. And that eventually led me to an opening at Marriott for an editor position. And at the time, they were standing up what is now Marriott Bonvoy Traveler. It was kind of a concept on paper, and they did not have editorial talent to bring that to life. So I came in to stand up this editorial product. So that's how I arrived here. I've been at Marriott now for 7 years. And so we've grown this site from about 3 destinations that we were covering to over 90 now. So it's been a really amazing endeavor, and then to bring us to work with great publishers like the Washington Post. And then just in terms of my first memories.
Your first great travel memory.
My first great travel memory. I guess I feel like I've been primed to travel. My parents put me on a plane when I was 6. By myself to go fly to visit my grandparents. And so I would fly in the summers to go visit my grandparents in the South. And this is at a time when one did that. You went up to the gate, you dropped your kid off. There was a flight attendant to take care of you, and you got wings pinned on your shirt or dress, and it was an occasion. I would get dressed up to go, and my grandparents would be there at the gate to greet me, and so I really enjoyed that. It was like it was an adventure, and you got paired up with another kid who might be flying, and it was just such a fun endeavor. And so I think that memory always stays with me when I think about going to explore someplace different. It has been, something that's been with me. Road trips and those kinds of things have always been a part of our family and our life. So That is my earliest memory.
It's funny, my first memory has to do with my grandparents as well, traveling to their ancestral home in Italy and their emotional journey of finding where their family was from that they didn't even know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
before we get into our collaboration, I would love to talk about sort of what's going on at Marriott. Obviously, the pandemic has been a roller coaster ride for travel. As another client said about their business, at one point, the fish are jumping into the bowl, the goldfish bowl, and at other points, they're all jumping out, right? So this has been a lot to navigate. I would love to hear, more details about how to travel better came about, what you're focusing on, some insights that, you stumbled across during this time of ups and downs. I mean, usually, I don't know about you all, but during times of tension, that's when you really get the best insights. That's when you really uncover the things that can change your business or, strike upon a content idea that, can really help your forward momentum.
That is very true in this instance, right? I think we all know that, during the pandemic, we were locked down, we were kept from travel. And for Marriott, that was devastating to the business, right? And it was a cliff drop for the business, something that no one had ever really thought could happen. And then we're all in our homes and unable to escape, to leave our environment. And we all know kind of the desperate feelings that we had knowing that. And so this in and of itself became an insight for us, right? That people had this primal need to travel, and that we were all looking for whatever ways we could to get outside, to go for a walk, to go to a park, those kinds of things, even, during the pandemic, trying to find out what could we do safely. And so knowing that, and then also at the same time, kind of dealing with a racial reckoning at the same time, and knowing that the role that travel plays in how we connect with one another, how we connect with other people and communities, and things like that. So these are all things that are kind of in our mindset as you come out of the pandemic and how you think about how we talk about travel. And so using that insight, these kinds of insights about travel, there were some studies that we found from Trivago that said 48% of people would quit their job to travel. I think another stat was like 38% of people would forego sex in order to travel, right? There was like, these were like really serious, like, this is serious.
The
like,
hierarchy of needs was changing rapidly.
Right. And we actually did kind of end up like mapping travel on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we think about who we are as human beings and what we need as human beings, love and belonging is on that list. I see travel playing a big part of that, right? We travel because we want to belong. We want to, we want to see the people that we love, and travel plays a role in that. Travel, is akin to air or breathing, or sleep in that way. So we kind of mapped it against that, not realizing that it was that intense. We always think about travel as a nice thing to do, as fun to do, but to now understand that it's really something that people really need to do to exist as a human being. And so those kinds of insights led us to where we arrived with this How to Travel Better piece. It's not just that we want to travel to get away or travel to, some of those surface level things that we think about with travel, that travel is much deeper than that for us. We had time to think about that, right? We had time to realize, okay, it's not just me getting in a car and going to a place, but it means something when I get in the car and go to the national park because I want to be outside, because I really value, these outdoor spaces. They matter to me. Or I really need to get away to see this person that really matters to me. Or we even want to travel to make these places better. to connect with communities that we haven't had a chance to connect with and support them, right? Because we know what the pandemic did to small businesses. And so now I want to travel because it's important to me to support these local communities, or national parks need our support, or these outdoor spaces need our support. We want to leave them better than how we found them. So that then led us to this concept that, travel is not just this surface thing that we do, but it's something that's really important to us. And not only that, we want to travel in better ways to support the communities we visit, the environments that we, are around us. And so then we decided, okay, how do we do this? Like, if we know we want to travel better, what are the things you actually need to do to travel better? So we developed this guide of sorts with, many types of articles, many types of content to speak to this idea. So it ranges from tip-driven articles that are literally like, here are the 5 ways to be a mindful traveler. Don't leave trash behind in these places. Make sure you're supporting local businesses in the places that you visit. Connect with someone by visiting a local bar or whatever that is. And then also we really wanted to think about it in even, I guess, more deep ways with some immersive articles that we did, where we did one in particular that's around the Great Barrier Reef and how you could be a citizen, a science citizen, and just collect data, go on a dive that allows you to collect data about what's happening in the coral reef there and give back in that way, or go to Hawaii and do a community event around the local fish ponds. It's a tradition in Hawaii of fishing that is fading, and how can we help them sustain this tradition and help them fish in more sustainable ways. These kinds of things are stories that people aren't often thinking about, and also give them ideas. And then we're letting the people on the ground speak about those experiences as well in those stories. So that's kind of how we got here.
Do we have a video? Do you want
Yes.
is it possible to show the video, the first video?
Maybe. This is a Costa Rica piece.
This is your moment of Zen today. So,
And just to give you a little background, Marriott Bonvoy has a hotel in Costa Rica called Punta Islita, and it is very grounded in the local artist community. The town itself is an open air museum, and so it's a great place to go and connect in with the artists, support their art, but then also it's it's on conservation ground, so you can support macaws, and so there's a conservation element. There's a support for a local community, so we wrote a story about this particular community and the people there.
thank you. Yeah, it's great. So one other thing I think that's, so you created this great platform. I think one of the other things that might be of interest that's really interesting to me about Marriott is you created this relationship with sort of an in-house agency, Marriott One Media. Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit about that and how that has factored into your work, how you collaborate with them?
I'll clarify this a little bit. So our team, my work comes out of a content marketing team at Marriott. There is a team of that's comprised of editorial strategy, that has a content studio that's focused on films and entertainment. Our brand social teams also sit under this team. So we're all together thinking about storytelling and content. So when we talk about how to travel better, it has manifested itself editorially, but also through podcasts and other mediums. So there's that. But then also we work with an external agency called Marriott One Media. And this is a boutique agency that sits within Publicis. And what we wanted to do is, tie our original content also to a paid campaign. And so this is where Marriott Media came into play. We looked at RFPing different agencies or publishers that we wanted to work with to carry through the same storytelling and kind of the underpinning of what we're talking about with how to travel better is this idea called regenerative travel. And in the travel space, not just kind of our storytelling, but elsewhere out in the world, there's this trend that people want to leave the world better when they travel. They want to give back, and that is the actual term. So that is the trend that we're kind of doing our storytelling around, but we also wanted our partners to do storytelling around that theme. And so this is where Marriott One Media kind of went to different publishers and said, hey, this is an RFP. Can you extend this storytelling into a paid media campaign? And this is how we came to work with the Post.
So our program there were insights also within the Washington Post around this notion of regenerative travel, and that you want to leave a place better than you found it, but we were also feeling like it leaves the human better than you found it. In other words, you will be transformed, regenerated, restored, reinvigorated by this travel. And the other thing at the Washington Post is that we had insights about how that meant very different things to different people. And travel sometimes is through a lens that can feel the sameness, like people are going to have the same experience in Costa Rica, where people might have very different experiences that might restore them, regenerate them in different ways. So we wanted to partner with Marriott to, just to quote, fresh faces with unique perspectives, exploring regenerative travel trends in the most innovative ways possible. So we wanted to find that concentric circle where their insights were mirroring our insights and really speak to this audience, do really immersive, impactful storytelling. So this program ran from August to January in 2021, and we actually did a call to action out in the community and asked for user-generated content, asked for people to send in their regenerative, story requests. And what came out of that was we narrowed it, we had about 250 submissions, narrowed it down to 5, and there were 3 stories in particular that we really focused on. One was a woman named Charlotte Simpson, who was a widow and was really interested in going to cities that were reemerging. You hear stories about that all the time, like Columbus or Pittsburgh or Oklahoma City are sort of cool again. Let's go check it out. So she went up to Buffalo and talked and met with local, artisans there and store owners, small business owners, and just really told that story of regeneration in Buffalo and showed how that helped her regenerate. She had been married to her husband for 31 years and was able to sort of get out there again and discover things, sort of carrying on that tradition. The next story was about Jalen Go, who was born, she had Navajo ancestry, she was adopted, and she wanted to go back on sort of that ancestral journey. She went to Gallup, New Mexico, and told that story. She's also a photographer. That was a highly visual trip. And then finally, there was Jeff Jenkins, who was a plus-size traveler. He has a following called Chubby Diaries, and he was very into adventure travel and trying to change perceptions of plus-size people doing adventure travel. So he went down to Florida and was helping protect some reefs. So what we love about these stories is that, we were able to, if you want to talk about some of the, differences we surfaced and how we worked on the storytelling and collaboration.
I think the points of intersection for us were one around trends. We went a kind of a layer deeper on the trends. Like while we were talking about regenerative travel as a trend, we went a layer deeper and said, okay, well, what else is happening in travel where we can pull that through? And on our side, we have a team called MLive that does geosocial tracking of trends. And one trend we saw was the second city trend that you mentioned, of people getting out to, beyond the New York cities, beyond these, typical places that you might think about visiting. And so we had that trend and you had that trend. So we're like, let's tell a story about this. And thought about this across the board. Another thing that was, I think, really important for us was to surface underrepresented voices. And that was a part of the call. It was specific to say, we're looking for the next generation of travel, storyteller, not the typical person that you expect to be, telling these stories. And so that's how we arrived at these three very different people with different perspectives on travel. Charlotte is a Black woman who is a widow. And she is older, right? Usually, we see, the Gen Z or millennial traveler. So she represented a different voice and reason for travel. Similar with Jalen, we had a lot of conversation about showcasing a Native American voice. How do we talk about travel in a space where, there is tension about land and where people are in the world, and so we were able to bring her voice and her perspective to the table. And again, Jeff, being a plus size traveler and what that represents. He talks about scuba diving and how not being able to fit the attire for scuba diving. So I'm really proud of the fact they were able to do that together.
So the other thing the Marriott team did in our collaboration was really pushed us to have immersive storytelling formats. So we really tried to give the audience a sense of place and time for what these people were experiencing. Highly immersive stuff, 360. We also leveraged a number of the Washington Post platforms, really played on TikTok. In fact, we created something called Trip Talk, and Jeff had a lot of fun introducing the whole program. And so that was also great from a collaborative standpoint. It wasn't sort of, hey, what do you want, right? We really worked together on making the story come to life in that way.
I think for both of us, TikTok is a new space to be in, and so for us to be able to do that together, I think was really great to be able to experiment there to see what played well, and the way that Jeff put that together, I think was really great for the medium.
So it's an ongoing collaboration. We did this last year. We're doing some more now, and it's constantly iterative. We're pulling in new insights. We're learning from what we did, what landed well, what performed well, and bringing that to the next phase of it. I think that's the other important thing. If you could talk about sort of, if you start a relationship with the audience around a certain topic, what do you need to do to sort of maintain it, nurture it, grow it?
I think one of the things that was really important for us coming out of this was to gain more insights, I guess, from a sentiment perspective. It's been an engagement play certainly to have people stay on site and really immerse themselves in stories, but then what's the payoff? What did you get from this? And I think what we wanted to find out was whether or not, people might have some more affinity for our brand after reading these stories, or understand more about us and our values at Marriott, and that representing these voices matters to us, and that protecting, our environment matters to us. And so we did find that out in a brand study that we did with this, that people were like, oh, we didn't know this. And now I might be more inclined to think differently about this brand and maybe even stay with these brands. So that was important to us. And I think that is another reason why you continue the storytelling, because we've learned this, that these kinds of things matter to your readers and our readers. And so we want to continue to show people who we are and what matters to us as a brand.
We can show you a little bit of Jalen's story. Is there another video, I hope? The next one. Thank you.
My name is Jalen Yenaba Goff. Yenaba is my Navajo name, which means warrior woman who wanders the mountains. I was adopted, and my mother is white, and I didn't know much about my traditions or culture until I went to Standing Rock, where I started to question who I was coming from and where I was coming from. That's also when I started Native Women's Wilderness. Native Women's Wilderness is an organization that works in creating community, derived from the frustration of the lack of Native representation in the outdoor industry, let alone Native women. My goal is to help share not only the lands of my people, but how to come into the Dene culture respectfully. When you travel, I believe it's important to do the research and to learn to go there in a more humble and respectful way. Whose land are you exploring on? Whose land are you hiking on? Whose land are you climbing on? To start the conversations of, let's talk about the original inhabitants.
I think one thing we really worked hard on together was creating that emotional connection, and the expressions, right, not just impressions, but expressions that we got from people on social media were really, really powerful. We have a minute and a half left. Are there any questions, thoughts, anything you want to know more about? Anyone?
Question. That was easy.
Thank you. Engagement sometimes is a hard metric to prove to a company who's trying to drive sales. So besides brand lift, are you able to kind of connect to sales? Is that a goal? Can you speak more about the KPIs?
Yes, sales was not our objective, right? It really was about expressing our values as a brand. So we were looking more towards, the sentiment that we got. That's why we did a brand study, and hearing back from readers about how they connected with these stories and possibly their intent, future intent.
Any other questions? All right, ladies, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.